The chandeliers dripped crystals like tears above the grand ballroom of the Rouen International Hotel. Waiters in white gloves rushed between marble pillars and long velvet-draped tables. At the center sat a little girl in a snow-white dress, her arms crossed and lips pursed in defiance. Her untouched plate of truffle risotto sat in front of her like a personal insult. All around, guests exchanged awkward glances. The room buzzed with whispers. Is she going to throw another plate? She's refused 5 courses already. Didn't they hire that celebrity chef from Paris? A hush fell as a tall figure entered from the back. Wang Jin, the CEO himself. Dressed in an impeccably cut black suit, face carved from stillness, he paused at the edge of the room, eyes locked on the scene unfolding. Beside him, his assistant leaned in and whispered, "Sir, it's the birthday banquet. Your daughter refuses to eat again. The media's all ready." "She won't eat because she knows it's fake," he said coldly, eyes narrowing on the gold-plated dishes. "She hates liars." Meanwhile, deep in the chaos of the kitchen, Hannah Lin adjusted her apron, clutching a tray of unused vegetables. She wasn't supposed to be here. Just an unpaid culinary intern. She had been yanked into the service team after one of the sous chefs fainted. "Hannah, you're not qualified to touch the garnishes, let alone speak," barked the head chef, smacking the ladle from her hand. "Stay out of the way and wipe the counters." But she had seen the panic. Every dish returned untouched, every chef more terrified than the last. And through the swinging kitchen doors, she caught a glimpse of the child at the center of it all. A little girl, lonely in a sea of suits and masks. Hannah's heart thudded. That child didn't need another overpriced dish. She needed warmth. And that's when it happened. Crash. A shriek tore through the ballroom. The birthday cake, an elaborate 5-tiered monstrosity, had collapsed onto the floor, toppling in slow motion like a fallen queen. Pink frosting exploded across the marble. The guests gasped. Cameras flashed. "I warned you this would happen," the head chef hissed, pointing a trembling finger at Hannah. It was her. She touched the table. Laughter and whispers erupted. Security moved. Wang Jin didn't speak. He didn't need to. One sharp nod from him, and Hannah was suddenly surrounded by 2 suited guards. She was frozen, heart pounding. She hadn't even touched the damn cake. Her voice shook. "I didn't, this isn't right. You're blaming the wrong person." The head chef's voice rose. "We can't afford a scandal. Just take her out." And that's when she made the boldest move of her life. She yanked off her apron, stepped out of the line of guards, and strode directly toward the long royal table. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A low murmur grew as she reached the untouched risotto dish in front of the little girl. The child blinked at her. Everyone waited for security to grab her, but no one moved. Even the CEO remained still, curiosity flickering in his cold gaze. Hannah knelt slowly, ignoring the room, looking only at the girl. "Do you want something real?" she asked gently. "Not this fancy mess. Something warm? Something that smells like home." The child's eyes welled with silent tears. She gave a small nod. A beat passed. Then Hannah stood, turned her back on the elite crowd, and walked into the kitchen, without waiting for permission. 10 minutes later, the doors to the ballroom swung open again. She carried a simple bowl, hand-pulled noodles in a rich broth, topped with soft egg and seasoned chicken. No caviar. No gold leaf. Just love. She placed it in front of the girl. A single bite. Silence. Then, "Can I take her home?" the child asked softly, pointing at Hannah. Every fork dropped. The CEO stood. Slowly. The head chef's face went white. Wang Jun's voice echoed across the room. "You. What's your name?" Hannah stood tall, chin up despite the tremble in her chest. "Hannah Lin." He stared at her for one long second that stretched like a blade between them. Then, "You start tomorrow. My daughter eats only what you cook now." A storm of gasps. And in the center of it all, Hannah just blinked, stunned. But deep inside, a fire lit. Because something had just shifted. And neither of their lives would ever be the same again. This isn't a job offer. Rwanjan's voice was cold, sharp, and final. Hannah stood frozen just inside the CEO's private penthouse kitchen, her hands still damp from washing up. She hadn't expected to be summoned straight to the top floor of the most secure building in the city, let alone face the man whose command had just upended her life. He turned, setting a crystal glass of whiskey down on the counter, and faced her fully. Under the ambient gold lighting, he looked even more dangerous than he did in the headlines. Sharp cheekbones, impassive gaze, and the quiet gravity of someone used to being obeyed. "You impressed my daughter, not me," he added, stepping closer. "Let's be clear. You're not here because of your resume. You're here because she cried when you left." Hannah's jaw tightened. "Then why summon me here? Why not send a nanny with a rice cooker?" He tilted his head slightly, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. "Because my daughter hasn't eaten a full meal in 6 months." The silence landed like thunder between them. Hannah's breath caught. He continued, voice low now. "Doctors, therapists, chefs flown in from Tokyo, Paris, Dubai. Nothing worked. Until you, an unpaid intern, walked into her life with a bowl of noodles and fixed what I couldn't." He stepped around the counter, each movement deliberate. "So don't get it twisted. You're not here to be admired. You're here to fix her appetite. If you fail," he stopped inches from her, "you walk. Quietly. Without a scene." Hannah looked up at him, pulse steady despite the storm inside her. "I'm not afraid of scenes, Mr. Wan," she said. "But I don't cook for power. I cook for people who are hungry, for more than just food." His eyes didn't blink, but his silence shifted, warmer, if only by a degree. Later that evening, she was escorted to the family's private estate, an elegant fortress tucked away in the hills above the city. The mansion shimmered in moonlight, surrounded by a marble garden and guarded like royalty. Inside, the little girl, E, sat cross-legged on the floor of her storybook-like room, clutching a stuffed rabbit. When she saw Hannah, her whole face lit up. "You came back." E leapt up and ran into her arms. The warmth of that tiny embrace nearly undid Hannah's composure. "I made something for you," Hannah said softly. "Want to help me finish it?" E nodded eagerly and tugged her toward the child-sized kitchen Hannah was allowed to use within the estate. As they stirred soup together, E whispered, "Other chefs make food that looks like art, but yours smells like my dreams." Hannah nearly dropped the spoon. Rwanjan watched them from the surveillance monitor in his study. He didn't usually watch cameras, but tonight he couldn't look away. The way the girl laughed, the way she leaned into Hannah like she belonged there, was something he hadn't seen in over a year. Not since E's mother walked out of their lives. He sipped his drink in silence, jaw tightening. Was it possible this girl, this stranger, was getting closer to his daughter than he ever had? Back in the kitchen, the night air had grown cooler. The soup was done. E had eaten every bite. Hannah sat by the window after tucking her in, resting her eyes just for a moment. She didn't hear Juan enter. "You stayed," he said quietly. She turned, startled. He wasn't in a suit anymore. He wore a black cashmere sweater and slacks. He looked almost human. "I couldn't walk away from her," she said. A pause. He stepped closer. "You could walk away from me, though, couldn't you?" The question stunned her more than the tone. "I don't owe you anything," she said. "Neither do I," he said. They stood there, two storms wrapped in silence. Then, a child's voice cut through the tension. "Miss Hannah," E's voice, small and sleepy, drifted from the hallway. "Can you stay forever?" Hannah's throat tightened. Her eyes darted to Ruan's. He said nothing, but something in his gaze had changed. And just like that, the line between job and fate blurred. The girl who was supposed to cook one meal had just stepped into the heart of a broken family. And the CEO who trusted no one had just let her in, whether he realized it or not. The storm began with a single flower. A pale pink camellia, delicate and out of place, sat on the kitchen counter the next morning when Hannah came down to prep breakfast. There was no note, just the flower, freshly cut, still glistening with dew. She stared at it, brow furrowed, glancing around the pristine, silent kitchen. No one else was supposed to have been here yet. E was still asleep. The household staff avoided this wing like it was cursed. Hannah picked up the bloom gently. It wasn't a thank you. It wasn't affection. It felt more like a test. "Are you trying to unsettle me, Mr. Wan?" she muttered under her breath, placing the flower beside the sink like a challenge she refused to lose. By noon, the household was buzzing. Rumor had spread that the CEO's personal chef, who was neither qualified nor welcomed, had made it through another night. "She must be sleeping with him," whispered a senior maid. "She's just lucky the child is attached," another scoffed. "It won't last." Hannah heard it all. She said nothing, but the sting found its way into her gut anyway. That afternoon, she found herself summoned to the private rooftop garden, an area she hadn't been allowed near before. It was perched atop their Wan estate, wrapped in glass, a garden in the clouds. And there he was, Wan Zhen, in a tailored charcoal jacket, sleeves rolled back, trimming bonsai with hands that looked far too lethal for something so delicate. He didn't look at her when she arrived. "I thought chefs preferred sun-dried herbs," he said casually, still focused on the shears. "That flower you ignored this morning? It came from up here." Hannah's spine straightened. So it was him. "I don't cook for flattery," she replied. "And I don't fall for silent gestures from men who won't look me in the eye." That made him glance up. And for the first time, something shifted in his expression. Not coldness, not arrogance. Curiosity. "You're the first woman to talk to me like that, and still be standing." She smirked. "Then you must have surrounded yourself with people who fear you too much." He leaned against the garden bench, arms folded. "Fear keeps things simple." Hannah stepped closer, refusing to shrink. "Fear doesn't feed a child. And fear won't bring your daughter back from the silence you clearly helped build." The words hung in the air, heavy. He didn't move, didn't blink, but his knuckles whitened on the bench's edge. And just when she thought he'd explode, he laughed. Low, hollow, as if it hurt him to do it. "You're bold, Hannah Lynn. And you're not nearly as terrifying as you want to be." For a long moment, they stood like that, locked in mutual defiance and something neither could name. Then, from the stairwell, a voice. Feminine. Sharp. Too familiar. "Zhen? I didn't know you were still entertaining strays." Hannah turned and saw her. Vivian Li, the youngest culinary ambassador in Asia, media darling, and Wan Zhen's former fiancé. Tall. Ice blonde. Wearing 5-inch heels and a look of effortless cruelty. She glared at Hannah like she'd found a rat in her wine. "Is this the girl?" Vivian said, stepping forward. "The intern who won over E with a peasant dish?" Wan didn't answer, but the silence said enough. Vivian smiled like a viper. "Well, I suppose even the mighty can fall for pretty faces and poor sob stories." Hannah raised a brow. "And some people mistake cruelty for sophistication." Vivian flinched, just for a second. Then she turned to Wan. "You always had a weakness for fire, Zhen. Just don't let it burn your house down." With that, she swept out of the garden like a ghost of wars to come. That night, Hannah returned to her small private room, one of the guest suites converted for her stay. She closed the door slowly behind her, pressing her back to it, chest rising. Her hands were shaking. Not from Vivian. Not even from Wan. But from what she was starting to feel, and what she knew she couldn't afford to. This wasn't a love story. It was a job. A fragile contract. A child depending on her. And yet, his gaze still lingered in her mind. Cold. Sharp. Curious. Too curious. Outside her door, in the shadows, Wan stood with his hand half raised to knock. But he didn't. He turned and walked away. But the flower in his hand? He left it by her door. A white camellia this time. The symbol of longing. The first sign was a photo, tucked where it didn't belong. Hannah hadn't meant to stumble upon it. She was just looking for a spice blend in the mansion's auxiliary pantry when the drawer jammed. She tugged gently. It slid open with a click. And there it was. A stack of documents carelessly wedged between boxes of imported sea salt and dried bay leaves. On top sat a glossy photograph, yellowed at the corners, its edge curling slightly like it had been handled often. Her breath caught. Two women, standing arm in arm in front of a food stall. One of them, young, bright-eyed, with a stubborn jaw and a flour-smudged apron, was her mother. The other, wearing dark glasses, half-turned from the camera, but unmistakably, Vivien Leigh, the elegant viper who had slithered through the rooftop garden days ago with venom in her smile. Hannah's stomach churned. She stared at the photo again. Her mother's face, warm and defiant. Vivien's, careful and calculated. What the hell were they doing together? Why was this hidden in Wanjun's house? And why was the name Wan scribbled on the back of the photo? She slid the photo into her apron pocket, mind spinning. That evening, Wanjun was in his study, reviewing quarterly numbers with his sleeves rolled up and a rare glass of wine untouched beside him. He barely looked up when Hannah entered. "You usually knock," he said without glancing away. "I usually don't find hidden photographs of my dead mother in your pantry," she shot back. That made him freeze. His eyes met hers, and for once, he looked truly caught off guard. Hannah dropped the photo onto the desk between them. "Explain." He picked it up slowly, eyes narrowing on the image like it had haunted him before. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "In your house. Behind your spices. I guess you keep your secrets next to the bay leaves." His jaw flexed. He stood, walked toward the massive window, his silhouette black against the city lights. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't speak. But then he did. "Your mother was a chef," he said, voice flat. "One of the most promising in the region. My father admired her work." Hannah blinked. Admired? Wan turned to her. He funded her. Secretly. Built her a restaurant under someone else's name. My mother didn't know. Vivien, back then, was just his protégé. She was sent to oversee operations. Hannah's blood turned cold. Vivien sabotaged her. He didn't deny it. The press claimed your mother stole recipes. My father never defended her. Her reputation was ruined in a week. Hannah's hands shook. She died of a stroke while serving noodles at a roadside stall. I was 12. Wan lowered his head. I only found out the truth a year ago, after my father died. She stared at him, eyes burning. So what now? You feed me white camellias and hope I forget my mother was destroyed by your bloodline? No, he said quietly. I hoped you'd never find out. The admission, honest but cowardly, crushed something inside her. You watched me walk into this house with that name, knowing what your family did, knowing I didn't know. I did, he said, and I hated myself for it. But she needed you. So, you used your daughter to keep me close? His voice cracked, barely. She loves you. That's not a lie. Hannah turned away before he could see the tears gather. You should have let me go the night I made that soup. I couldn't, he said. Not after I saw how she looked at you. Not after I saw how you looked at her. She turned back slowly. You saw something else too. You saw how I cook like her. Like my mother. Didn't you? He didn't answer. Didn't need to. The silence between them screamed the truth. Later that night, Hannah sat at the edge of her bed, staring at her mother's photo, her fingers trembling. Everything made sense now. Why Vivien had mocked her with such pointed venom. Why the kitchen staff whispered with disdain. Why Wan looked at her not like a stranger, but like a ghost. She wasn't just the girl who made a miracle meal. She was the daughter of the woman they all tried to erase. And now the truth was out. But the worst part? Her heart still raced when she thought of him. And she hated that more than anything. The kitchen was too quiet, which in the Wan estate meant danger. Hannah's fingers trembled slightly as she sliced radishes, the blade thudding rhythmically against the wooden board. She hadn't spoken to Wanjun since the confrontation. The photo of her mother and Vivien now lived in the lining of her purse, folded, fragile, and burning against her hip like a scar. Was still asleep. The staff was avoiding her. And Hannah, for the first time since she'd stepped into this world of glass walls and silk lies, felt like she was suffocating. She had to leave. But she had to say goodbye to first. Just as she turned to pack up, Vivien walked into the kitchen in heels too loud for any peace. Well, Vivien said with a slow smile, If it isn't the daughter of the woman I buried. Hannah dropped the knife. Vivian picked it up casually, flipping it in her manicured hand. You should have stayed forgotten. But now that you're here, let me warn you. Sentimentality doesn't last in the Rouen world. Jean gets bored fast. Especially with women who stir up ghosts. I'm not here for him, Hannah said, voice trembling but firm. I'm here for E. Vivian tilted her head. And when he marries me, what do you think happens to you? The door burst open. Wan Jun, standing there, eyes like knives, breath tight. Vivian, he said sharply, get out. Vivian straightened, mask cracking slightly. You're choosing her over me? Over your future? I already made my choice the day I let Hannah into this house, he said coldly. You just didn't see it. Vivian's face went pale. But Hannah, her heart twisted. You don't get to make choices for me, she snapped.
Not now.
Not after everything you hid. The staff had begun gathering at the hallway edges. Word was spreading too fast. The scene had turned into a spectacle. Hannah stepped forward. You brought me here knowing what your family did to mine. You let your daughter call me family. You looked at me like I meant something. You do, Rouen said, suddenly raw. I didn't know how to undo the damage without losing you. You already did, she whispered. And then E appeared, barefoot, holding her rabbit, wide-eyed. Why is everyone yelling? She asked, looking up at Hannah. The moment shattered. Hannah dropped to her knees and gathered the little girl in her arms. Sweetheart, she said gently, voice catching. I have to go away for a while. No, E's voice cracked instantly, arms tightening around Hannah's neck. No. You said you'd stay forever. Tears spilled down Hannah's face. I didn't know everything back then. E's sobs grew louder. And for once, Rouen's composure fractured. He knelt beside them, voice hoarse. E, listen to me. If she leaves, it's because I made a mistake, not because she stopped loving you. But you promised she could stay, the girl cried. Silence. The staff murmured. Cameras from the entry hall glinted. The media had arrived for a charity brunch and caught the entire breakdown. A headline was already being born. CEO's love scandal erupts in front of daughter. Emotional breakdown goes public. Later, in the echo of silence, Hannah stood alone by the front gates, suitcase by her side. Rouen walked out slowly, stopping a few feet away. She's still crying, he said. So am I, Hannah replied, not turning. He stepped closer. You asked me once if I saw your mother in you. I do. And I also see what I never gave her, a chance to fight back. You can't fix the past, she whispered.
No, he said.
But maybe I can change the future. Hannah turned then just once. His face was open, vulnerable, but her heart still cracked. I came here with nothing, she said, and somehow I'm leaving with less. She pulled open the car door, then paused. From behind, E's voice echoed, muffled but clear. Miss Hannah, I'll wait. Forever. Tears blurred her vision. She shut the door and left. 3 months later, the city still whispered her name. Not the way they had before, with mockery or scorn. Now it carried a different weight. She used to work for Wan Jun, right? No, she changed him. They say he still sets the table for 3. In a quiet corner of the East District, tucked behind an old bookstore and framed by climbing ivy, a new restaurant had opened. Yun. No PR. No grand opening. Just a sign in soft white font and the scent of something warm always drifting through the air. Broth, ginger, toasted garlic. Inside, Hannah Lynn moved like memory, silent, steady, and unmistakably her mother's daughter. She didn't need fame. She had purpose. Every night, she cooked for a line of strangers who slowly turned into regulars. Lonely souls, tired businessmen, young couples, silent widows. Each bowl held more than food. It held comfort.
Dignity.
Home. She hadn't seen Juan since the day she left. But she felt him. In the way her hand hesitated when stirring soup. In the way E's voice still echoed in her ears. I'll wait. Forever. Across town, the Juan estate stood still. The press had quieted. Vivian had vanished to Europe under the weight of scandal.
And Wanjun?
He was different.
Colder to the board.
Quieter in meetings, but never cruel. Sometimes, he sat in the empty chair beside Yi at breakfast, tracing the grain of the wood, wishing it were her hand. His daughter had stopped smiling at meals. She barely spoke at all, until one morning, she climbed into his lap, held his face in her tiny hands and whispered, "You let her go. And now we're both starving." It was raining the night he found her. Not in a limousine.
Not with bodyguards.
Just a dark coat and an umbrella in hand, standing across the street from her restaurant, watching her through the glass. She was laughing with an old man who had burned his tongue on dumpling soup. Her hair was messy, her apron stained. She looked more alive than she ever had in his mansion. He didn't walk in.
He didn't dare. Not yet.
2 nights later, she found a little box on her doorstep. No note. Inside, a pressed white camellia. And a child's drawing. 3 figures holding hands. A bowl of soup. A smiley sun. Hannah sat down hard on the step, hands shaking. And then the doorbell rang. She opened it slowly. Juan stood there, soaked to the bone. "You forgot your umbrella," he said softly, holding one out. She didn't take it. She only stared. "I didn't come to fix anything," he said. "I came because I'm the one who's broken." Her heart cracked again. Same fault lines.
Same man.
"I hurt you," he continued, voice barely steady. "I buried the truth. I betrayed your mother's memory. And I tried to keep you in my world without ever earning a place in yours. You didn't just hurt me," she said. "You made me wonder if I mattered." His eyes glistened. "And now?" he asked. She hesitated. "Now, I matter to me." He let out a soft breath, half pain, half awe. "I don't want to ask you for anything," he said. "Not your forgiveness. Not your love. But she still sets a place for you at dinner. Every single night." Hannah swallowed hard. The storm inside her wasn't gone, but it was quieter now. More familiar. "Do you still cook?" she asked suddenly. Juan blinked. "Only when I miss you." She smiled. It hurt, but it was real. "Then maybe," she whispered, "you should show me." Later that night, under the warm yellow lights of her restaurant, Juan rolled up his sleeves for the first time in his life and made dumplings beside her. They were clumsy, misshapen, falling apart. But when E ran in and hugged them both, flour on her cheeks and tears in her lashes, they tasted like coming home.